Assalamu alaikum everyone, this is Zohaib Tahir from ZMeds, and today we are going to talk about the third part of introduction to autonomic nervous system, that is a chemical signaling between cells and autonomic nervous system at very basic molecular level. So we will have the overview of neurotransmission, hormone secretions and the receptors. So first of all, let's talk about the chemical signaling, in which neurotransmitters are involved, hormones are also involved, to some extent local mediators as well. So what will happen? Message traveling from the stimulus to the CNS takes some action of neurotransmitters, and then in response to that stimulus there could be the release of local mediators. For example, in case of any allergy, there will be there will be the function of local mediators, but in some cases hormones could be released, and in maximum cases neurotransmitters will travel from the stimulus through the neurons towards CNS, and then from the CNS to the effector organ to take the action against or along the stimulus. So why is it so important? It is important to build a healthy connection, healthy communication between the cells. If you feel any stimulus, say for example, if you are touching any hot body, hot pot or something, then according to the normal physiology, your hand should come back immediately with a reflex. It is a normal thing. If it is going to happen, this is a normal thing to happen. Otherwise, if you don't have any smooth connection with your hand, what will happen? Your hand will be burnt. So this communication is very healthy, and neurotransmission, hormones and local mediators all comes under the key example of autonomic nervous system that we'll see today. First of all, we have to understand what are hormones. Well, these are the chemical messengers which are secreted from the endocrine glands directly into the bloodstream. So there are different hormones: somatotrophin hormones, gonadotrophin hormones, TSH, T3, T4 and many other hormones which are directly excreted into the bloodstream, and then these hormones reach the target through the blood. So the transmission in case of hormones isn't enough quick as compared to the neurotransmission, because they have to travel with the blood pressure. If the blood pressure is low, of course there will be delay to reach the target site. So broad distribution of effects. So for example, you have insulin has a very broad range of actions. Cortisol have very broad range of actions, has to control the inflammatory processes. So very wide range of the actions you can see from hormones. They're not sticking to one specific action. They are performing one specific function by doing so many actions. For example, insulin has to reduce blood glucose level. How will this thing happen? There are different actions: decreasing the synthesis of glucose, reducing the breakdown into the glucose, and there are different processes. Reducing the absorption from the gut, so that there will be not enough blood glucose level in our body. What about local mediators? Local mediators have not to travel through the bloodstream, have not to travel through the neurons, rather they have to act locally. In case of any bruise, any damage of the small blood vessel, damage to the endothelial cells will take place, and as a result there will be some mediators known as the cytokines. What will happen? They will attract more and more platelets to a stick. So they are performing the local action, because platelets are also present in the blood, and those platelets which are nearby the damaged endothelial will be attracted towards the bruised side or the wound side, so that the platelets get aggregated state, and hence there is a plug formation and thrombus formation in order to prevent the bleeding. So local mediators are going to act locally rather than traveling in the blood or in the neurons. These are rapidly synthesized and rapidly degraded as well. It includes the example of histamines and prostaglandins. Now comes the main topic, that is neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are actually chemicals which have to travel through the neuron in order to move the action membrane potential. And what is action membrane potential? It is actually the message transmitted from the receptor to the CNS, and then from CNS to the effector. And how this thing is going to happen? This is triggered by calcium influx. If calcium moves into the neuron, there will be more positive charge inside the neuron as compared to the outside, and hence there will be formation and there will be generation of action membrane potential. Through action membrane potential, the vesicles containing neurotransmitters will travel along the neuron, will reach the presynaptic membrane. At the presynaptic membrane, vesicles will bind with the membrane, will fuse with the membrane, releasing the neurotransmitter at the synaptic cleft. From the synaptic cleft, neurotransmitters will bind to the post synaptic membrane, receptors present on the postsynaptic membrane, and there will be the generation of the action potential, and then action potential will propagate in the postganglionic fiber as well. So this is how calcium works. This is how calcium triggers the neurotransmission. Next, we have the membrane receptors. There are different types of membrane receptors. We will discuss later on. We will just have the overlook of membrane receptors. These are the hydrophilic signal binding sites where the ligand or the hydrophilic signals will bind, and what will happen next? There will be generation of the secondary messenger. There will be increase in the number of the secondary messenger, which will lead to the propagation of different events to provoke a specific action in the cell. So for example, beta 1 receptors are present in the heart muscles. So what will happen when beta 1 receptors present on the cardiac muscles, myocardium, get stimulated? There will be increase in the conduction of the ions. So there will be the fast conduction, or there will be increased conduction of the membrane potential or action potential, and as a result, what will happen? There will be increased contraction, there will be increased heart rate. So most receptors are proteinic in nature. Now we are going to see what are different key neurotransmitters present in our body. So more than 50 types have been identified of the neurotransmitters, and the key ones includes acetylcholine, which controls the cholinergic and nicotinic receptors. Norepinephrine, I have told you in the part 2 of the introduction to autonomic nervous system that norepinephrine is a neurotransmitter while epinephrine is a hormone. So norepinephrine controls adrenergic outflow. Others are dopamine, acting on the dopaminergic receptors that could be excitatory or inhibitory. We will discuss dopamine receptors in the Parkinson's disease. Serotonin controls the serotonergic, and we will see different drugs working with the serotonin, like SSRIs, fluoxetine, paroxetine. We will discuss more in detail about serotonin in that very topic. Histamine, mostly related to allergies and increased gastric irritation. H2 receptors are present in the parietal cells, while throughout the skin, H1 receptors are present, which leads to the allergic reactions. Glutamate, that is one of the excitatory neurotransmitter, and GABA, gamma aminobutyric acid, one of the key inhibitory neurotransmitter in our body. So ANS deals with acetylcholine and norepinephrine. First of all, we will talk about the cholinergic neurons, which uses acetylcholine as a neurotransmitter. So where we will see cholinergic neurons in the autonomic ganglia, sympathetic or parasympathetic. Right at the ganglia, neurotransmitter acetylcholine will be utilized. Whatever the system is, it doesn't matter. We will see a diagram in which it will be very clear to you. Parasympathetic effector synapses. Just parasympathetic contains acetylcholine as a neurotransmitter, but adrenal medulla contains nicotinic receptors. So at nicotinic receptors, there will be binding of acetylcholine rather than the adrenaline or noradrenaline. And in the somatic nervous system, NMJ means neuromuscular junction. NM type of receptors means nicotinic receptors are present in NMJ. What about adrenergic neurons? Well, adrenergic neurons, transmission is controlled by the norepinephrine, which is found in the sympathetic postganglionic. Means these receptors, adrenergic receptors, are present on the effector organ, and epinephrine is released by adrenal medulla in response to acetylcholine binding to the nicotinic receptor at adrenal medulla. Remember this thing, that the release of epinephrine and norepinephrine is controlled by acetylcholine, not by epinephrine or norepinephrine. It is still sympathetic but controlled by acetylcholine. Here is a diagram from Lippincott Pharmacology. Here you can see somatic innervation. Let me bring, yep. Here you can see somatic. In somatic, there will be no ganglia. There will be single neuron innervating the muscle, skeletal muscle. And here is the NMJ, neuromuscular junction. Just one fiber releasing acetylcholine as a neurotransmitter. If you see parasympathetic and sympathetic preganglionic fiber, then preganglionic fiber, these are the preganglionic fibers, sympathetic and parasympathetic, both are releasing acetylcholine. So acetylcholine will act in the, yes, presynaptic or the preganglionic fiber on the nicotinic receptors, which are NN type of receptors. After that, at the in the parasympathetic system, what will happen? There will be cholinergic receptors, muscarinic receptors present on the effector organ. Like this, muscarinic receptors are present, not the nicotinic, not adrenergic, but muscarinic receptors. While in case of sympathetic nervous system, you will see that norepinephrine is getting binded to the receptors, adrenergic receptors on the effector organ. In case of sympathetic innervation of adrenal medulla, there is a slight difference, that there is only one fiber. You will see there is only one fiber releasing acetylcholine. So acetylcholine will bind to the nicotinic receptor present on the adrenal medulla. After that, there will be release of epinephrine and norepinephrine. Epinephrine will be taken up into the blood, and norepinephrine will be taken up into the neurons. Norepinephrine will cause the actions through the neurons, while epinephrine will show its action through blood, and then will bind to the adrenergic receptors. Okay, we have discussed about the termination of the neurotransmitter action. Acetylcholine is broken down into acetyl group and choline group. Choline is digested, while acetyl is reutilized and it is converted into acetyl coenzyme A. While norepinephrine is destroyed into multiple metabolites with the help of monoamine oxidase and COMT, means catechol O methyl transferase, and this happens because of the reuptake. Okay. Next, we have the signal transduction that takes place with the help of receptors. So there is receptor binding, means ligand will bind to the receptor, and after that intracellular responses will start. It could be increase in the cyclic AMP, it could be increase in the cyclic GMP, or opening of any type of channels, activation of the phospholipase C to form inositol 3-phosphate or DAG, diacylglycerol. There are different mechanisms through which signal transduction can take place. So it could be ionotropic, means directly affecting the channels, like nicotinic. In case of nicotinic receptors, there will be opening of the channels. In case of GABAergic receptors, you will see that chloride channels get open. Same goes here. Well, in case of metabotropic, which are GPCRs. GPCRs means G protein coupled receptors, which are muscarinic and adrenergic. There will be induction of the secondary messenger like cyclic AMP or cyclic GMP. By increasing the amount or the concentration of cyclic AMP or cyclic GMP, what will happen? Actions will be actions will occur differently. Next, we have second messengers, as I have told you before. It could be adenylyl cyclase. Adenylyl cyclase is an enzyme which will convert the ATP into cyclic AMP. While it could be the release of calcium through phosphatidyl inositol or IP3, that is getting activated with the help of an enzyme known as the phospholipase C. And there is another thing known as DAG, diethylglycerol, also acting as a second messenger. So what is the function of second messenger? To amplify and mediate the cellular response. So cell performance, cell action is decided by these secondary messengers. What could happen in autonomic dysfunction, known as dysautonomia? So we have seen in the second part, the autonomic nervous system controls heart rate, blood pressure, GI movement, secretion. So those kind of activities are going to be affected with dysautonomia. There are different diseases in which there is abnormal level of acetylcholine or the adrenaline, noradrenaline, or dopamine, leading to different diseases such as Parkinson's. In Parkinson, acetylcholine is more and dopamine is less, resulting in Parkinson's disease. While in case of diabetes, if there is no secretion of there is no you can say the action of acetylcholine or the epinephrine, majorly epinephrine, on the beta cells, what will happen? There will be no release of insulin, and that will lead to diabetes. Alcoholism. In alcoholism, there will be depression of the autonomic nervous system. So CNS degeneration can happen physically, means physical damage can occur, like in case of spinal lesions or or in case of MS, means sclerosis. This thing can happen, and it could be influenced by the drugs can damage or can cause the tolerance or the dependence of the receptors, resulting in the inability of the receptor to perform its action by enhancing or by getting stimulated and enhancing these intracellular actions to perform the